this is really a two-front war, right? We obviously have what's going on in the courtroom, but we also have what's going on in the court of public opinion. And, they don't always match up, but a lot of times they do. And so there is a potential opportunity in this coming week, assuming the ruling goes the way that I expect it to go, which is that he's not going to be allowed to proceed with that cause of action based on the forged FBI letter. That needs to be flipped. Okay. The script on that needs to be flipped because normal people understand that it's insane to do something like that. And how could he possibly not be able to sue somebody? Like it's just absolutely crazy. And so there is a certain, I think, injustice in that if people understand the facts and understand like this, look at these circumstances. I mean, they are so incredibly damning. The text messages between them in the act of composing this freaking letter. Okay. Yep. And just given that we know what a two-tiered justice system we have, how there are such different rules for the people that I represent who are not pretty and rich and educated and everything like Evan Rachel Wood is, do you think for a second they would get that break that she is getting for doing something like that?
Of course not.
I mean, this is the potential for, because that is it's a very attention grabbing piece of the case. And so if that does end up being kind of a hinge point in this decision, that's what needs to be highlighted because it just shows, look how crazy the situation is. Look at what a shit show the state of the law is, that it's not going to allow him to go forward on this.
What are you thinking or feeling going into the anti-SLAPP?
So I think the judge has really kind of telegraphed already, what her thought process is. And it is kind of unfortunate because it does seem like she's coming down on this side of not really, getting the FBI letter as a cause of action by Marilyn Manson. Like it's one thing for it to be obviously a crazy thing to do, like what a lunatic thing to do. But as far as like, fitting that into a civil claim that's got specific elements and stuff like that, she has clearly indicated that she's skeptical of that. Mm-hmm. The law on that, Evan does seem to have some fairly good law on that, which is like mind boggling when you go and look at it, that like, oh no, perjury is like protected under anti-SLAPP. I mean, it's just insane, some of this stuff. But given that context, I don't think it's going to be regarded as a win for Manson. It's probably going to be a situation where, to the extent somebody wins, it's going to be Evan and Illma. They're probably going to have at least some success, I think, with it. Having said that, of course, the overall big picture in all of this is that certainly doesn't do away with the cause of action, in general. I mean, he's still got a case. He's still got lots of claims. In a way, it's kind of good to just get it resolved so that they can move forward with the discovery, move forward with the actual litigation piece that is going to move it closer towards having a conclusion, so that it's not just sitting here in limbo, with all of this just uncertainty still kind of surrounding everything. So,
well,
it's going to be a mixed bag.
Well, you said that that you think it's probably gonna hurt a bit from Manson's side in turn. Let me ask you this: is it just that the way that these anti-SLAPP laws are written, that it's just that hard to clear the bar, or is it that look? I mean, I believe he's innocent. You believe he's innocent. I think whatever, but is his case just kind of a little weak on that?
No, I think it's really largely California's anti-SLAPP statute. I mean, It is the most protective anti-SLAPP statute in the entire country. And as you can see from, the examples that came out in the briefing, the things like, no, perjury, perjury doesn't make it not okay, for purposes of anti-SLAPP. I mean, these things just seem kind of counterintuitive. And frankly, even to me, like, that's just nuts.
Really?
But
like,
that's
so
what the law is. And so, knowing what it is and what it should be are different kinds of propositions. So as far as predicting an outcome, they're going to apply this crazy ass law, and that's not necessarily going to work in his favor.
I really like that you flat out say it's crazy ass law. So is this the norm? I know we've talked about like how Johnny Depp had to go to Virginia, to find a state that didn't have this kind of, as you put it, crazy ass. Is state. California, like, is this everywhere or is it really excessive for California?
It's very much state by state. California was the first one to adopt a statute like this. And so it's been sort of the model for other states. Some have, like New York has recently gotten a lot closer to California in its model. Previously, it was a little closer to Virginia, where it's like, yeah, don't sue people for exercising their First Amendment rights, but it doesn't necessarily have this complicated procedure set out and all these, like ability to get attorney fees and all that type of thing. So California is still, from my perspective, really an outlier in terms of, being very stringent at this early screening stage, because that's part of the problem. You have discovery because you recognize, I can be justified in filing a lawsuit and not have all of my evidence to be able to prove it. But that's what the anti-SLAPP statute essentially requires them to do, is to have all of the evidence they need to be able to prove it by the time they even go and file, because they're not going to have the opportunity to do more discovery to be able to substantiate it. And then they're going to be held to this burden of, essentially, can you make your case without doing anything else? So, yeah, it's very stringent, very unusual, very specific thing that happens, in the civil world when you're dealing with speech type claims like this.
Well, it's like, because Vanessa was saying earlier, you're saying, Vanessa, that there are people in your life who have been abusive or shitty or whatever, and it's not like you've gone on some vendetta, to try to get them. And I guess, Andrea, what I was curious about is, like, it seems so unfair that one party, Evan Rachel Wood, could just go on this, like, kind of this metaphorical rampage of just trying to destroy this guy in every way possible, and a media campaign and all that, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but he's like, his hands are even tied in the courts. I don't know. It just doesn't seem fair.
Yeah.
It's infuriating.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with any of that. It is unfair. I recognize that, I'm not against libel laws. I'm not against protection for the First Amendment. I think that, yes, people need to be able to speak freely. People need to be able to criticize strongly. These are important values. But, also recognizing that that's not a free pass to just go out and maliciously lie about people. Clearly there's a middle ground there that needs to be sought out. And we just seem to be at a point in our society where, for whatever reason, it's just very easy for especially women to be able to go out and make these types of accusations against men, knowing that they're not true, destroying men's lives, and really not suffer any types of repercussions for that.
Okay, so do you detect that the judge does have some kind of resistance to Manson's perspective on this? And if so, why do you think? Is she just kind of feminist, do you think? I mean, I don't know her, but, like, what do you think's going on?
No, I wouldn't say I necessarily have that type of a read on her. Okay. I'd say my perspective is just largely coming from what she said and kind of the cards that she has shown when we have had the opportunity to hear from her, read the orders and things like that. To me, it appears that she is basing it on the law. She's not necessarily, biased against Manson. I would have liked to have seen a broader scope of discovery for the anti-SLAPP when he had filed that motion asking for permission for specific things like take the deposition of Illma Gore and stuff like that. Particularly with the FBI officer, that's just such an important piece of the hoax. I think that to me, it seems important enough to the overall theory of the case that they should have been allowed to have the opportunity to go into that at this stage. But, judges are political animals. They have so many considerations going on. And when I say they're political animals, I don't just mean, Democrat, Republican. It's a very basic level. I mean, they're thinking about reelection. They're operating within a system where there's very much go along to get along. I mean, you're operating with other judges and the clerks and the lawyers and everything, and you want your system to operate smoothly. So there's a lot of don't ruffle feathers, and people just kind of find their way in that system. I don't really get any read from her that is, outside of that sort of ordinary what I would expect.
Well, I mean, that's
I
good.
think,
Like, I would be concerned if you were getting some kind of a strong word, because I don't want that. You know, I hope the judge
oh, of course
doesn't have.
not.
So, looking into the Nexium stuff, like there were some things that they got this guy on. Supposedly, he got one of his people to like break into her father's email, and he got in like serious, like there were charges and stuff related to that from the government.
Mm-hmm.
Illma Gore breaking, like these people like taking passwords, breaking an email, trying to send like CP, and like none of the, there's just no charges in here, like criminal charges.
I mean, it's a very fair point. You know, the prosecution decisions are always selective. You know, again, it comes back to these people all being political animals, and you know, just having the constituencies to please. There's no political hunger to go after Evan Rachel Wood. And,
Well, that's
you
true.
know, quite frankly, when you look at her political bedfellows, I think it would be really crystal clear why. You get what advantage you have that's presented to you. And Evan Rachel Wood, you know, she presents as very high profile spokesperson, and she comes across as very well spoken and educated, and what a story. I mean, my goodness, how compelling is that? And so the fact that it's just an enormous pack of lies that, you know, she's literally fabricated from the FBI, you know, just don't bother calling any attention to that point. That's not useful. So get what's useful out of her, and then just don't mention it ever again.
Well, your point's taken, and so, but if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying the DA is not going to file charges, no one's going to pursue it, but you're telling me like theoretically there could be like criminal crimes here, like criminal crimes. There could be crimes here.
No, I mean, if nothing else, you know, she has allegedly presented a forged document in a custody trial as evidence. I mean, she has perpetrated a fraud on the court. Like, these things are crimes. If there was a stomach to prosecute them, they are prosecutable. But you know, no, there isn't a stomach to prosecute them.
Oh man, wow!
Did you ever wanted to say, like,
go ahead?
That whole aspect of they're saying that he like hacked into her whatever, and I don't know what they were saying about Manson being some kind of technological genius. It took like 6 hours for him to figure out how to set up the Wi-Fi at his new house. So he's not some kind of like technological genius who knows how to hack into other people's stuff, you know? Me and him are always like, yeah, we're old. We don't know how this shit works. So I don't know where they thought they were going to go with that, you know, accusation.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, Vanessa, because it's always been interesting. I found always kind of curious how to believe this view of these views of Manson. Like, you'd have to hold like oppositional things in your head at the same time. So like, for instance, he's supposed to be like, so, you know, by their telling, he's been such a lush, such an alcoholic, out of his mind on drugs, sloppy. And yet at the same time, he's like masterminding all these things.
Exactly.